A statement of victory, as we said. Arsenal 3 to Liverpool. What enabled Arsenal to win this game, JJ?
They scored more goals than Liverpool, which is obviously a good thing when you're trying to win the game. But they they took advantage of lots of errors that Liverpool made. Liverpool don't look anywhere near as good as they were. But Arsenal are just playing a really, really intense attacking style of football. And they start off in the first minute. They go right at them from the very beginning. Liverpool can't handle it. They take advantage of the space that's left from this changing system that Liverpool have played. And then that's the good start. So they start games really fast. There's an article I think Art de Roche wrote. Where's your table going?
Just moving my table.
Oh my god, we're haunted. And so it's on about how they start games fast, and that really helps. But then I think over time, Liverpool, we did a video on this on Tifo IRL if you want to watch actual analysis with the tactics board and stuff. But then Liverpool gained control of the midfield. There's loads of reasons for it, but essentially Arsenal couldn't get close enough to Thiago and Henderson, who were able to then, Thiago especially, run the game, and they got control of it. And at one point Liverpool had 62% possession in that half, but Arsenal held on. They equalised. Obviously Liverpool got an equaliser. It's to do with movement in the back line and balls going through the middle of the defence. And Gabriel and Saliba were getting split a little bit, caught flat, and the balls going through the middle of them. But by the end of it, again, so they start strong and they finish strong, and that's how they managed to get that goal in the counter-attack again, like getting in behind them. And then in the second half, they keep up the momentum. Like I think they had a big team talk or something like that. It really went for the players, and they got them all revved up, came out.
They do that after every goal as well, don't they? That's quite interesting.
To do what?
They all sort of gather. It looks like Granit Xhaka is telling everyone after they've scored. They celebrate, and then they have a huddle, and Xhaka says, "Everyone stay calm," and then they go back to the work.
Well, part of the thing that seems to have worked with Arsenal now is that they've got really good team spirit. They've got a good group of players who are roughly about the same age. They're a very young team as well, so they've got loads of energy. They all seem to share. They seem to get on with each other, which really helps. But they've got momentum, and they're winning. Everything they're doing is helping them win. So that just builds and builds and builds and builds. And there's not much you can do about beating a team who's really full of confidence. And so they're just driving each other on. There's that real community going on with that team, and you can see like we just talked about a bit last week, like how the crowd seems to be really loud in Emirates at the moment. And then you've got Arteta driving everyone up, and like he's an avatar for. He wants to be in the pitch. You can see him. He's dancing about all the way through, really animated, and I think people connect with that. And that just helps them play. It just feels like it's a real good place to go at the moment.
John, Tomiyasu started at left back in this game. Kieran Tierney was available and did indeed come on a little bit later, but wasn't quite sure why that was happening initially. Can you shed any light on that, please?
Yeah, one of the things I talk about a lot when I talk about Arteta is his flexibility, the flexibility of the team that he's set up now. And I think one of the most interesting things for me about the game was that we've seen Arsenal play a number of different build-up shapes. But when it came to playing against Liverpool, they really pushed their fullbacks wide. We've talked a lot about the fullbacks being inverted whenever Arsenal are playing, but we didn't really see any of that. And so I think the general idea was to keep those fullbacks as close to the touchlines as possible, spread Arsenal's front line, and as a result of that, it just meant that Liverpool's press would be less effective, and I think it caused them a lot of problems. So I think bringing in Tomiyasu is probably in part to do with that, the ability to just sort of have these two fullbacks a little bit wider. I think it allowed them to sit a little bit deeper as well. You want someone to cover Mohamed Salah on that side
because he's right-footed, isn't he? So is that so that when Salah cuts inside, he can also come inside and challenge with a strong foot?
Whether or not they were thinking about that, I don't know. But I mean, it's an argument to be made, and I do like the idea of Salah cutting onto his stronger foot and then Tomiyasu defending on his stronger side. But I generally think that it's probably just to do with defensive solidity overall. I think that
Steve Hankey's making the point that he's very bipedal as well.
Ambidextrous, as I like to say.
Ambidextrous.
I think it has a lot to do with set pieces also, because it means they essentially have four centre-backs in the back line for when you're defending
you've got Ben
corners.
White on the other side,
Yeah, you've got Liverpool have Alexander-Arnold, who's great at delivery, Tsimikas, who's great at delivery, and Van Dijk and Matip, who are really good at getting their heads on the ball. So you can outnumber them for set pieces. It's really useful. And in terms of flexibility as well, with Arteta, like John's saying, he made a few key decisions in this game that changed things. So at half-time, so when Thiago and Henderson were getting all of the ball, basically their 4-2-3-1 is like a 4-2-4 really. And Klopp was talking about after the game, it was an interview, I can't remember his name, it was a really good interview, and he was saying how they're not playing the way he wants them to. The floor are playing in a straight line. They just have two different lines, so there should be a bit of depth between them, and they alternate positions and they swap and whatever. What was my point I was just on? I was just there.
It sounded so
no,
interesting.
Arteta did, yes. So Thiago was getting too much of the ball and controlling things because they had Odegaard. So basically, Odegaard was playing up next to them in the pressing shape was a 4-2-3-1. So there was Odegaard behind the central striker Jesus, so they form a flat two. What they did in the second half was change it to a 4-1-4-1. So Partey sat a bit deeper behind the four. So you had Xhaka going tight to Henderson, and you had Odegaard going tight to Thiago, which is limited the amount of time they had on the ball.
Right.
Which then meant Liverpool were trying to play wide later on in the game.
Yeah.
And so later on, he took on Kieran Tierney to make it a back five. I don't think it was purely defensive.
Yeah.
At this point, he'd taken Salah off, Klopp had taken Salah off, and put Henderson further forward. And I think it's because Salah was just pulled wide the whole time because you want to play Núñez through the middle with Jota through the middle, which means there's very little space for Salah to then go and attack through that half space. So he then ends up staying wide, just kept quiet with Tomiyasu, who has him kept in. Alexander-Arnold is deeper. He's not getting the ball down that right wing to Salah quite so easily. Henderson's sort of stuck in the middle. And then, but later on, when they're trying to play wide and funnel everything through the wide areas, if you have wing backs, you can double up and get 3v2s in the wide areas. So you had Tierney, Xhaka, and Martinelli, I think, later on in that game, who were able to then double up. So Liverpool couldn't go through the middle, couldn't go wide, and then they weren't able to play the way they wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. Seb, let me ask you. JJ just mentioned Salah there being taken off with about 30 minutes left to play, which is quite unusual in a game that Liverpool aren't leading at the time. Do you think that is as a result of what JJ is saying and what we said about Tomiyasu before, kind of marking him out of the game, or is there something a bit broader to it? He's not been fantastic this season so far.
No, I think he achieved an amazing level about 12 months ago, sort of between that kind of October to February period last season. But then we're talking about kind of Tomiyasu playing on the left and having the benefit of his right foot. But how many times have you seen Salah go down a fullback's left-hand side and go to the touchline? And then, so like, it's not like he's not Aaron Robben. He doesn't just have one trick. And so when he's not doing anything in that situation, that's quite concerning. I think more broadly, I think there's something in how Liverpool are being trained at the moment. In terms of kind of, Klopp spoke through the summer about the challenges of this season, the unique ones because of the scheduling of the World Cup. Yeah. And Salah seems, either by design or unintentionally, he seems stuck in quite a low gear. Like there's still a really good footballer there, but it's operating at kind of 65% of the speed of usual, and the intensity of usual, of normal. And, I think it shows. Like, I think I thought one of the most jarring contrasts is actually, if you look at Arsenal's start, and JJ mentioned Art's writing about this, that's the start we're used to seeing from Liverpool at Anfield, or have been for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And Liverpool are kind of, Salah's kind of a cipher for everything Liverpool are at the moment, which is they are just a collection of very good players with a lot of their intensity stripped away. And I don't know, like the season will tell whether that's a kind of a powering down for the sake of longevity, or being able to manage a Champions League campaign and a Premier League effort, title tilt. But it was weird to see. It's very jarring, the contrast.
Yeah, you only get one touch in the box on a Sunday, and so normally his average. So I went through his touches per game to see if there's any difference in how he's playing. His average of 55.97 touches per game in 21-22, so last season, with about 11 touches in the box per average per 90. But this season he's having about 6 touches fewer per game generally, and then he's getting like 1 fewer in the box, so not really anything to read in too much. But in this game they kept him so quiet that he was only having 1 touch in the box. I think a lot of it really does have to do with Alexander-Arnold's deeper positioning, and his expected assists apparently have just fallen through.
What's the situation with Alexander-Arnold's deeper positioning? And also a little follow-up question to that as well. I mean, when Alexander-Arnold was taken off, it doesn't really seem like Liverpool have a backup for him, except Milner and Joe Gomez. Right?
Calvin Ramsey, Aberdeen superstar right back that they signed for a bit of money.
Why didn't he come on?
I don't think he's ready. He's come out of being injured. I'd imagine he'll take a little while. Klopp tends to take a little while with his players, especially young ones, to learn the tactical setup properly to be able to do that. And dropping him into a Liverpool team like this, if you're brand new, maybe a bit nervous, would be, you could potentially like damage the player, like dent his confidence if he's getting done in.
Well, I mean, speaking of dented confidence, I'm starting to feel very bad for Alexander-Arnold, because like I can't remember who it was, but I saw someone referring to the situation with him at the moment as like similar to what's happened with Maguire, like where it looks like maybe it's now impacting his performances, because he was quite bad in this game. He made like a couple of critical mistakes which led to goals, but also the person, I wish I could remember who tweeted this, but the person who tweeted about this made the point that those aren't mistakes that Alexander-Arnold would normally make. It's almost like it's a kind of double down as a result of the negative criticism.
I think you overthink it, and people are going at Liverpool when they sense a bit of weakness. There's a real hunger to go and punish it, and so I think it dominoes. They fall a little bit like that. I think it's deeper positioning. So what they're doing is they're sort of building in a back three, keeping him deeper. Yeah. When you think about what he's best at, it's playing these long passes and being able to create from wide areas or in the half space in the final third. You'll see him often drop into the sixth position as well.
Yeah.
But if you keep him deeper, in theory, it might give him more protection because you've got Henderson in front of him. You can come over and cover him in front. You don't get that much protection from Salah, but he's coming back a lot more in recent games, I've noticed, especially in the 4-2-3-1 that they're playing. That means that Tsimikas pushes forward on the left. So what you get is the back three of, say, Matip, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold will form a bit of a triangle with the deepest player being Matip because he's a right-sided centre-back. And then you'll have a player, normally Henderson, Thiago could drop in or Fabinho could drop in to form a diamond. So you've got options to pass through the lines. Lots of teams do this, like Chelsea are doing it under Potter now as well. There's loads of things you can do with that. But if you sit him slightly deeper, you tend to have players not marking him as much, which means that when he picks up the ball, he's a free man in space. So he's like a deep lying playmaker, just wide, just deeper than he was previously. So he's not getting forward as much, so they're not leaving the space, because what teams are exploiting is the space between the centre backs and the full backs. And the goal that Arsenal scored, the first one, is Saka playing wide of Tsimikas. So the ball goes through the gap between centre back and full back. So he runs in, that's where they get back. And then it's not an error by Tsimikas, it's just a tactical thing that people know to exploit now.
Yeah.
And in the past, Alexander-Arnold's been called out for it loads of times, but it tends to be something that's filled with it. But Arsenal know that, and then they're overloading that left side. Xhaka's always making runs on the left side. Another tactical, deliberate point made by Arteta is to have the overlapping left-sided midfielder, Xhaka, come over. So they're always getting wide of him. So Alexander-Arnold's stuck. You see the goal that he scored, the first one. Alexander-Arnold's basically dealing with three players at once in front of him. He's surrounded, and they're doing it on purpose, and it's really hard to deal with. You need support from someone further up to come back and support him so he can not have to cover too many. Because any player, like Paolo Maldini, would struggle to deal with three players on one.
Yeah. John, I mean, on Liverpool's formation changes recently, do you think we'll see them continued for the rest of the season? And is it fair to say that one beneficiary appears to be Roberto Firmino, who has played quite well when Liverpool have had that two-striker system?
I think the question is going to be, why have they switched their formation around?
Yeah.
I think the reason for that is because their high press isn't working at the moment.
Yeah.
The reason why they're constantly exposed is because teams are able to move the ball through them in the areas that they want, like JJ is saying there.
Yeah, Arsenal did that really easily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think they are definitely targeting that area around Alexander-Arnold, because one of the things I've noticed that Liverpool are doing a lot at the moment is they're getting pulled over in the final line a lot. So they're going... They're always a man away from where they want to be. So you end up with like Virgil van Dijk pushing out to the left back spot. This was what we saw in the first goal. So you get in behind Tsimikas, the left back. Van Dijk pulls across, Matip pulls across, and they're now essentially playing the left back and then the left centre back role. Yeah. And then you've got Alexander-Arnold as the essentially right centre back in that situation, and then you've got two or three Arsenal players around them. And I think that the problem is that, I mean, that's fine. If you want to be risky in that way, that's fine. But the problem is that because they're so open in their press, there's just a volume of chances now, or build-ups, just going through those areas and then trying to hit on the far side. And I think that's the problem. So I think that the formation change is about, I mean, essentially moving from their 4-3-3, where with the 4-3-3, the problem they always have is, well, if you have a front three, you're almost sacrificing area in the wide areas. And so what Liverpool have been doing is they've been dropping their wider players, so Salah and Diaz, usually dropping them to help out with the fullback so that you're not getting overloaded in those areas. Yeah. And then what they do is they push out with their 8. So often Jordan Henderson will push out on a fullback rather than the wide player, just to stop those wide players getting pulled forward. Now it seems as though they flipped that, because the 4-4-2 that they're now essentially in when they're pressing, or the 4-2-4 that it was ending up in yesterday, the idea then is that you just sit your wingers deeper anyway, and then you have an extra striker who can help with the forward press so that you're not quite so exposed in the middle and you don't end up with your 8s pushing out all the time.
Yeah.
And I think the problem was, as Klopp was saying, is that they were, the way that Arsenal were playing, because they were playing with their 4 in build-up and they were sitting quite deep, they were just pulling those wide players forward, generating huge spaces around the 2 in midfield, moving the ball into those areas and then getting in behind the fullback, because when obviously when the ball goes into those areas, the fullbacks push up, you generate space there, play the ball in behind, and then you've only got 3 defensive players all get pulled across. You've got space at the far side.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the other thing is that because they've bought obviously Darwin Núñez, they're trying to change a little bit what they're doing. You have to evolve constantly, otherwise you stay still, and you need to keep going forward to adapt. And people make you want to be less predictable is what you want to try and be. And so if you play Firmino as the 9, what he's done in the past, I think everyone knows this now, is that he just dropped deep. Yeah. So essentially you're playing a 4-4-2 diamond because he's the 10 with 2 strikers ahead, and your strikers are Salah and Mane. Now, you won't get the secret to being a good manager is getting all your best players on the pitch. The best players are Diaz, Jota, well, Núñez maybe there, and Salah. So it's your best 4 attackers. You put them on this pitch at the same time.
Ahead of Firmino.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've put Firmino in there, but you want to try and get Núñez.
He's had a good season so far.
Yeah, he's scored loads of goals. He's had one of his most successful seasons ever, I think, at the start of it so far, like per 90. But you want to try and get Núñez in, and like you want to build his confidence. You're not rebuilding, but you're trying to get a new team. Like Liverpool, the second oldest, I think it's first team or squad, one of the two.
Yeah,
the thing came up, and Arsenal's the second youngest, something like that. Yeah. So they're a little bit older, and when you want to be able to press and be energetic and brave, then you want to have energy and confidence and dynamism. Another thing, like when you compare the two, like because Arsenal's got this young squad and they're playing brave, it's really risky football. Like they can easily get taken away on the counter, and I think it'll happen a couple of times this season. But like they were leaving their back 4 were like 1v1 with Liverpool's attackers. Yeah. So when you had Saka in the front line of the press, Saka wasn't marking the left back. He was going inside between the left back and the centre back, which meant that Ben White was pushing up on Tsimikas. That's really aggressive.
Well, I'm going to ask John about that in a second, because John can use his favourite phrase in football.
I hate
Seb,
Joe. What?
Yeah, that's not. Seb, before we do that, before we move back to Arsenal, Liverpool, I haven't got the league table in front of me, but I don't think I need to look at it to see that it's a bit of a sorry sight for them at the moment. I also know every time a new season starts and I like to say, can we call it already? And it's only October. Everyone shouts at me and says no. But at least with the form of City and Arsenal at the moment, is it already too late for Liverpool? Aren't they something like 10 points plus behind?
14.
Now? 14 points behind. Is it? I mean, have Liverpool lost the chance to challenge for the title?
If this was still last season, I'd say no. But I think the difference this year is that City's only real weakness a year ago was that in games where they needed a goal, they didn't have that traditional forceful number 9. They didn't have a player that, even if they played badly, could get them goals by himself. And now they do. And so you feel like 10 points this season is a much broader gap than it was a year ago. Also, I feel like, I don't know, maybe this will be proven wrong, but it does feel like Liverpool's energy is being directed elsewhere. Like it's one of those where I think Liverpool remain a little bit fixated on righting the wrongs of last season's European Cup. I think that's probably the trophy that they want to win again. And I think this squad is better equipped to do it, because I think this group of players is interesting that we talk about the kind of the range of options at the top of Liverpool's formation, because during their best years on the Klopp, it's been very permanent. It's been very set in stone who would be starting in which position and in what combination. And now it feels more like a team that you pick on mood or depending on the opposition you're facing. And I don't know, that to me seems a little bit more suited to knockout football, potentially, as the Champions League goes forward and also as after the World Cup ends. So we'll see. But it's very difficult to see them becoming mechanical in the way that City are. Like Arsenal and City are playing sort of two different forms of the game in a way. Like City is a kind of evolved version of what they've always been, whereas Arsenal's much more high energy. And Liverpool don't really have either of those things at the moment. Like they're not Arsenal or City in the kind of like the challenger form, I guess.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.